Hi, Troy. It's great to have you here. Here we are again, the fourth Wednesday of the month. So
Hello.
this is such a service that you provide. In addition to this, I'm going to give a plug for the Friday morning men's group that you do every week. Grateful for that. And the Betrayed Partner Attachment Wounds group on alternating Thursdays. And on the Seeking Integrity site, we have your attachment wounds finding peace work group starting again in September, which is a 6-week work group for men. So I hope people lean into those resources. So but I was just starting to say too that I was talking to somebody about the abandonment wounds and attachment wounds that happen with adoption. And this particular person shared that the bio mom had kept the child for a few weeks and then turned over. So, and I don't know if there's a difference between that or immediate or whatever, but I thought, I know that those are deep core wounds. So even head knowing doesn't change the heart feeling.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That's big stuff right there.
yeah. And I don't know how I don't know how you start on a deep core level, going, okay, I know it here, but how do I start to shift those wounds? So,
I think that, at least for me, the first part was recognizing that the wound existed. That I didn't even consider that was a wound at all. I grew up in a family where there were a lot of challenges. There were wounds in and of themselves in the family that I was raised in, but there was love. And I was told from the moment that I can remember that I was adopted, and the way that they shared that I was adopted was they said it was a special love. So they tried to make it special. So there was a part of me that actually thought that it was kind of cool that I was adopted. It wasn't until I was in therapy and my therapist helped me understand that, yeah, but there is a wound there. And that's when I started to realize, yeah, there is, and it's big. And I started to see the pattern of how that abandonment shows up throughout my life, with different people coming and going in my life, and the stories that I then began to tell myself about me because of these disconnections that weren't accurate. But once I was able to identify that wound was there, I could start to tend to it and I could start to take care of it. But until then, I was oblivious to it, and I would just react when people would disappear in my life or they would stop talking. I would react and I'd get angry and not quite understand why that was happening. And then once I started to understand the wound and start to do some grief work around that, it started to shift. So
I have a question for you with that. So because I would think in my head, I'd be going, but I'm a special gift to my adoptive parents. So how do you start reconciling this is a deep wound and this also happened? If you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. Would love to have the questions in the Q&A. I see something in the chat, I will try to follow, but so how do you reconcile, because I can tell myself all these things, oh yeah, but I'm so special, because I was adopted. So
yeah, so the
oh wow, this is interesting.
so each one of the attachment wounds has some pretty common core beliefs that go along with it. And with abandonment, there must have been something wrong with me that I wasn't wanted. So even though I was given to a family that wanted me, the core beliefs are faulty for a reason, right? They don't, you can challenge them, but they're faulty for a reason. But the deep belief inside is, well, there must have been something inherently wrong with me as a baby that she didn't want me. And that's why she had to give me up. And that wasn't true, but there, in fact, I actually met my birth mother when I was 38, and that wasn't true at all, but I didn't know. So I'm left with not knowing. And as a child, we make up stories. So the story was, well, there must have been something that was wrong with me that she didn't want me. And so that's the story. So even though the person is put into, and oftentimes they are put into a very loving home with parents who love them and siblings who care about them, and that's beautiful and a wonderful experience, there's still this wound that sits there. And it's the best way that I can describe it is because I knew I was adopted. Whenever I was at school, I was always looking around, wondering if there was somebody else because I knew that I was adopted. I was born in the hospital down the street from my house. So I knew that there was probably the likelihood that there was probably somebody that I was related to nearby. How true that was, I didn't actually know how true that was. There was, like, turns out that my adopted mother, who was a school teacher and taught two of my half siblings. Like, that's how crazy this story is. But so the truth is that was a thing. But I'm sitting in school and I'm always looking around, like, who looks like me, who has my nose, who has my eyes, always wondering about that. And even though most people would have looked at my family pictures and they would never have guessed, because I had brown eyes, my mom had brown eyes, and they never would have guessed that we're different. I felt different. I knew that I did not belong to these people. I knew they loved me. I knew I was part of their family, and they are my family. And yet there was also at the back of my mind a sense of, but who else do I belong to? So that mystery of things. And it was a closed adoption. Nowadays, there's usually an open adoption, so that some of that isn't the same for kids who are adopted now. I'm not trying to diminish it. The wound is still there, but it's a different experience because they usually have contact with their birth parent, or they send pictures, so they have a little bit of a understanding of who that is and they understand the story. For me, it was a closed adoption, so I didn't have any of that information. So I was left to make up stories about all of that.
So somebody put in the chat, and this is, as the daughter of an adopted parent, I have a personal experience of being a child of a wounded, abandoned father. And I was thinking, okay, like I was thinking of your story, but then I'm thinking, wow, I mean, you've attended to it, you've done your work. But for somebody who is holding those wounds, then I can only imagine how that ekes out into into the next generation and beyond too. I mean, it's like, someone who's, a child of an alcoholic, that ekes out too. So.
Right. Yeah. So bringing children into the world was really special for me because they were my first connection, because I still didn't know who my birth parents were at that time. So they were the first one, but again, I didn't have any information to share with them and tell them about where I came. I would tell people if I felt like I was dropped from outer space and I didn't know where I came from or anything about me, but I was put in a family that loved me. So I lucked out with that. I was put in a family that loved me, but didn't know anything about me. And whenever I would fill out medical questionnaire and they'd ask about health information, I didn't know. So all of that was just kind of left to unknown, which is all of that abandonment wound. And then the story is, well, what was wrong with me that I wasn't wanted? The truth is, she loved me so much. My birth father was an alcoholic. She was 18, he was 17. He was an alcoholic. She told him that she was pregnant. He said, well, if we got married, I'd probably beat you every night. And so she said, I can't bring a little boy into the world in a world like that. And so she loved me enough to want to make sure that I was raised in a family with a mom and a dad. So her choice was because she loved me, not because she didn't want me. She wanted me, but she didn't have the ability to provide the way that she wanted. So, but I didn't know that. And so she had a wound. When I met her the first time, her husband told me that every Valentine's Day she would look out the window and just wonder where I was. And she didn't want to find me because she didn't want to ruin any kind of relationship that I might have had with my parents. So she didn't want to mess any of that up. And I was afraid to find her because I didn't know if she had told her husband or had any kids. I didn't want to mess that up. Like there was this fear of messing that up. But eventually, because my brother found his birth parents, it gave me the courage to go down that path. But we so some healing happened with that. But the wound still is there, even though we've connected. When I go to her house and spend time at like holidays and things like that, I still am an outsider. They have done an amazing job of loving me, but they have different traditions. They do different things. And so it's my family, but it isn't. And so it still works. It's still working through all of that. So anyway, thanks for asking.
Thanks for sharing. That was not what I planned on doing to you this morning. So thank you all for being here. So, okay, I'm going to try to read the question. So, okay. All right. We'll both take a breath. I lately see myself in my mind's eye in a crib, totally alone and in terror, nobody there or care. Now I often wake up and can feel this panic and terror. How can I see this now?
So I'm not sure if that actually happens to you. I'm guessing that maybe that did. And so the mind is an amazing thing. And so part of it is you seeing yourself as your adult self, reaching over the crib of your little self and picking up your little self and holding your little self and rocking your little self and singing lullabies to your little self and telling messages of love to your little self. And then even like pulling that little self into your heart and using this imagery of like, I'm pulling you in and I'm got you tucked in here and you're safe now. You are not alone. I have you. And I'm going to protect you. And so that's a way of being able to shift that. Our brains are pretty lazy. They don't like to work very hard, and so it will go back to the like, if you think about a filing cabinet that has like pictures in it, like our brain will just like open up the filing cabinet and pick up the picture that's in the front. And so if you're able to just practice taking care of your little self, and that's the image that you keep practicing, then when you open the filing cabinet, that picture of you being alone in the crib is going to be tucked out way in the back. And the one that's going to be there is you picking up yourself, and your brain is going to like pick up on that. So it makes it a little easier to do that. You got to practice a little bit, maybe for a couple of weeks, just as part of a meditation, or just listening to some beautiful music and just like rocking yourself. But you can shift it just by doing some imagery.
I've used it. It wasn't for a crib. Mine was an 8-year-old, but the ability to parent my 8-year-old, huge. And I can go, that's like, I know, oh, I mean, like I can do that in, in seconds now, do that loop and shift it, rather than, going down I'm completely abandoned. I'm alone. I'm this poor baby in a crib. No one's there, so try it. It really does work. So, okay. Next question is, I was in an accident. My mom has told me more than once she was a vulnerable narcissist, always playing the victim, even though she victimized many people. My spouse becomes the victim when I try to share my feelings too. I wrote her a letter once of how I felt being raised, which she totally ignored. I feel no closure with her, but I feel I need to. She is gone now. So how do I do that? That's a great question.
Yeah, so it's interesting that she knew that she was a vulnerable narcissist. So somehow she figured that out. Most narcissists don't admit that. So that's that's something.
Do you think she is? I mean, because she said she was and always playing that victim, but so do you think she understood that, or do you think I'm not sure.
I don't know. When I was in an accident, my mom has told me more than once she was a vulnerable narcissist. So I don't know if your mom did say she was a vulnerable narcissist. That's something, because most vulnerable narcissists don't do that. But your question is, there's two parts to it. Number one, your spouse becomes the victim when you try to share your feelings. We do have a tendency to like find people in the universe that give us a chance to try and work through the stuff from our past. I don't know how we do that, but we tend to do that. It's kind of annoying, but we do. So that's an opportunity for you kind of to work through that stuff with your mom. So it sounds like your husband may want to come to my empathy retreat that I'm doing in July. By the way, I'll put that in the link, because I am doing that to help guys have more empathy. But how your question was, how do I work through the lack of closure with my mom not really validating my feelings? It's almost identical to what I was just saying with the image of pulling the crib. You can validate your feelings. Your mom has passed away now, or she's no longer with you. So she's not the same anymore. There's a technique sometimes that we use called the golden mother letter, where you write down a letter to yourself from what we would call the golden mother, which is the mother that you wish you had. The mother who was so beautiful, golden, full of love and kindness, and just saw you as unconditionally love, just had unconditional love for you, didn't make any mistakes, just like that. Not necessarily perfect, but just this golden mother. And that mother writes a letter to you. And so you write it. So you write to yourself, dear so-and-so, and you write, and all the things that you would want to hear your mother say to you that you never got to hear. And then you go ask somebody, a mothering figure, to read it to you, to have someone read it to you, somebody that you love, somebody that you trust. Make sure that if you're going to do that, make it like a special time. Give them a heads up, explain what it is that you're doing, and let them Like, try to make it a special experience and let them read it to you and love on you, and see if you could breathe that in, and that can shift some of that. And then after that, then in the Finding Peace workbook, there's an exercise, I think it's like in chapter 7, called saying goodbye, saying hello, where you say goodbye to your mom and then you say hello to the things that you have learned from and that you're moving forward with. It's just a 1-page little exercise that you can do. So I'm saying goodbye to all the stuff that no longer serves you in relationship to your mom, and then what are you saying hello to as you move forward? And so those two things might help you find some closure as you move forward with your mom. As far as your husband, he gets uncomfortable because he doesn't know how to tolerate emotion, which is not necessarily his fault. A lot of guys do not know how to manage emotion. It becomes very uncomfortable when emotion starts to happen around men. Cortisol starts to be pumped through their body. It's the stress chemical. It's like a very itchy chemical, and what that does is it makes us like get up and move to get us moving. So cortisol is a stress chemical to get us to do something. And when men see emotion, for the most part, that's what happens in their body, and they don't know what to do with it until they have been taught and given some tools to learn how to develop some resiliency. So they just don't know. So they don't respond as well as you want. But those are some thoughts that I have that might help.
And I'm going to try to key in on, I was an accident. You weren't an accident. You are here. You deserve to be here. I would invite you to have affirming messages of, I am worthy. Troy says all the time, I am worthy. If you hopefully can shift it from, I was an accident, I wasn't, we're all here with purpose. And so I would invite you to shift that in a positive way for yourself too. But I love the golden mother. I've not heard that one before. Of course, that made me cry too. So fortunately I've got Kleenex handy. So, all right, next question. So,
I'm no fun at parties. I make everybody cry.
Apparently. Okay. My husband's childhood wounds have never been a secret to me. His trauma was pretty big. And not only was his mom emotionally abusive and neglectful, etc., but his younger brother was killed by a drunk driver in front of their house when he was 7 years old. It only got worse for him from there. My husband also knows my childhood trauma, which was also severe. I loved him, so I was careful not to ever hurt him further. He used my trauma against me and did all these horrible things to me. It feels like he gets an excuse for how he handled his pain. Why do we handle things so differently? That's a great question. I am so sorry for both of you, and knowing why doesn't shift things. So,
right. When I was doing my internship at Gateway Allegheny Rehab, it was a drug and alcohol rehab center in Pittsburgh. It was my first exposure really to the work of therapy, and where I started to develop the concept of attachment wounds. And what I realized as people started to tell their stories and they started to describe their wounds, even though that's not the term we used at the time, they started to understand why they were using drugs or why they were whatever. What we found is that the why didn't change their behavior at all. It was very insightful, and it was helpful to understand why they did it, but it actually didn't change the fact that they still went out and drank, or they still went out and used their drugs. So having an understanding of the trauma is only the first part. It just helps put some pieces together, but it doesn't actually do the healing part. why we handle things so differently, we handle things differently based on the way that we were raised, based on and the way that we were nurtured, based on the family structures that we had, the rules that our families had, whether we had open family systems, closed family systems, the culture that your family had versus the culture that your husband's family had. So some of that of how things are handled differently, that's why we handle those differently. What I'm hearing though is that both of you have a lot of pain. And he would use, when he was hurting, he would use your pain against you, which made it even worse. You have empathy, as I'm reading your note, you have empathy for his pain, and you can see the profound pain that he has. That comes a little bit more naturally for women than men. I don't know why it is that your brains are wired to have a little bit more compassion and empathy than men do. And so you probably wouldn't use his past and his pain against him like he does. So the question though is, it feels like he gets an excuse. That, that's the challenge. Like when people often, when we say, hey, you're a sex addict, there's this fear of, well, okay, well, that gives me an excuse then to go act out. No, it doesn't give you an excuse. It helps you understand that there's something that needs to be done, and what are you going to do about it? It gives you responsibility to do something about it. It's not an excuse. So his wounds and your wounds are not an excuse. It is a reason why people behave the way they do. But once you know that you have an abandonment wound or a rejection wound or a loss wound or a betrayal wound, once you know that, it's your responsibility to do something about it. Because if I don't, once I'm aware that I have those wounds and I don't do something about it, I'm going to inflict pain in the people's lives around me. Before that, I mean, I felt shame and I would feel crappy because I did that. But once I started to realize, oh my gosh, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I got a huge rejection wound and a huge abandonment wound. I got to do something about that, because I don't want to pass that on to my kids. I don't want to pass that on to my friends. Like, I don't want to keep, it's responsibility, not an excuse. And that's very different.
And I hope, separately from what he's done, that you own that you've got a lot of trauma. So I hope you're doing work with a qualified professional to help you work through that. There's, body techniques like, somatic experience and, EMDR. And there's a number of different modalities that could be helpful for you, in the varying layers of trauma. Okay, next question. What should I do as my healing what should I do as the healing partner when I am told by my hurt partner that she does not want to hear me talk about any of my needs for feeling safe because I hurt her so much? Is it right for me to abandon my needs indefinitely until she is fully healed?
Indefinitely, no. So you're the healing partner. And you are told by your hurt partner that she doesn't want to hear you talk about any of your needs for feeling safe because I hurt her so much. So that's the challenge. So your needs are just as important as your partner's. The challenge is that there's probably not enough safety built into the relationship right now that your partner feels like she has the capacity to be able to meet your needs. Like, if you think about, I use the analogy of a love and belonging tank. And when our love and belonging tank is full, I'm thriving and I feel great and I can contribute and I can use that fuel to bless the world. But if I'm empty and if my tank is all rusted and there's like some holes in it, it's like nearly impossible. I can't give back. Like, I just don't have it in me. And so it's not that your tank doesn't need to be filled. It's just that I don't have anything in my tank to be able to give you because my tank's rusted and empty. And so there's two parts of that. One, and this is tricky, but one is being able to turn to other safe, healthy people in your life to help get some of those needs met. That's why we have the drop-in groups and invite and recommend you go to 12-step meetings and get a sponsor and those kind of things so that you can get some of those needs met so that your tank is not completely empty. And the second is figuring out how to create safety and help start patching up the tank for your spouse so that there is more capacity to be able to help get needs met. So if when she's saying that she just can't hear your needs right now, what she's saying is, I'm really empty. So that's hard because you're probably empty too. So it's the challenge is, okay, what can I do that maybe could help patch up her tank a little bit, even a little bit? Is there anything that I could do to maybe make this a little easier for her? It's an interesting thing. Sue Johnson in her book Hold Me Tight, one of the very first exercises that she has the couples fill out is called the ARE questionnaire, and one of the questions is how much does my spouse make it easy for me to connect?
Mm.
When I do the relationship class that I teach, I flip that on its head. How much do I make it easy for my spouse to connect? Because it's easy to blame my spouse for not making it easy for me to connect, but really, what part is mine? What am I doing that makes it easier for my spouse or my partner to connect? And so I know it hurts and I know it sucks and it feels like abandonment or rejection or neglect when this is happening. And that's probably because she's got a huge betrayal wound. So the part is, what can you do to tend to that wound for her a little bit? And as you do so, her capacity to help meet your needs is going to improve.
Yeah, and we always say too, like, get support from others who have been the betraying partner. I mean, we heal in community. We strongly encourage betrayed partners to get support from other betrayed partners, and you to get support from other people who are on this journey to be different. And so that can help you each find some safety and fill each of your tanks a bit, in other positive, healthy ways. But I love that you're asking the question too. And I was thinking too that, for me, like we just talked about with the crib and the baby and all of that, I've learned to identify, some of my needs and to understand that I can reparent my younger self. I can go, oh, my abandonment wound is getting poked pretty good right now. So I'm going to do some self-care. I'm going to ground myself. I'm going to visualize that, so there are some things I can do to self-soothe in a positive way, and not need someone else to fix that for me. And I can also say, I'm looking for this for the future. And so I visualize at some point that here's the space that we can do. I understand you can't do that now, but I hold this space so that, when we can do this, and I want to meet your needs and you meet mine, and we're human. We won't do it perfectly, no matter how hard we try. So, okay, next question. I come from a family with 2 mentally ill parents, so I had lots of neglect. I did not realize that at the time. I'm learning that now with my CSAT, since finding out about my husband's sex addiction. I find it hard to speak to my husband, not about his addiction or my boundaries or my pain. I always feel like I just can't bring myself to speak to him. Is there a connection between my neglect from childhood to not being able to speak my mind to my husband?
Yeah, yes. Oftentimes with the neglect wound, the core belief is that my needs don't matter. That my wants and needs don't matter. My thoughts don't matter. My wants don't matter. My emotions don't matter. Like, I'm just going to have to figure out how to do all of this by myself, because the people in my life, they're not going to be there. So I'm just going to have to figure that out. So when it comes then to being vulnerable and actually sharing your thoughts or your feelings, your emotions, part of the challenge is, well, why would I do it? Because it probably doesn't matter. And then you have a husband who's a sex addict. And so I would imagine that part of his behavior has left you feeling neglected, depending on what he's done, time away from you, some betrayal, that kind of stuff. And so that kind of fuels that core belief of, well, why would I share? It doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to have to deal with this all by myself. And so I would imagine that that's some of the core beliefs that are going on. And then the impotent one, probably that's just out of shame, shows up with that and says, yeah, well, even if you shared your feelings or your thoughts or your mind with your husband, he probably wouldn't listen anyway, probably be distracted or something. So I don't even know why you'd bother. So that's what I'm guessing is going on. And you didn't have anybody who modeled what it looked like to have somebody listen until you found a CSAT who was listening. And so hopefully you're finding some friends and some support who are also willing to model what it's like to hear you and help you start to challenge that core belief and recognize there are people in this world who do want to pay attention to you, and that you do matter, and that what you have to say and what you have to share is important. And as your husband hopefully is doing his work and gets better, he's also able to recognize that too, and hear that too, and he's shifting, and so that those needs begin to be met and that core belief begins to disintegrate.
I was thinking I was like, well, so is my taking care of myself a bad thing? And probably on some level, but no, I mean, it really helps me get a little bandwidth, and put things in perspective. And I'm not justifying, but I am in healthy connection with lots of people. So, okay. So, and this isn't about me, but I was also thinking, I wonder, like, if you guys had a structured check-in, so that there's a safe place and it's 2 minutes and you guys, like, there's a framework of this is what we're going to do. And so you get to practice on something that is, small and contained, and, and try it and dip your toe in and, and see. But I really do love, I mean, I hope that you're connected with other betrayed partners. We have a betrayed partner drop-in group at 12:30 today Pacific time, another one tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. I mean, there's lots of opportunities, to connect with other betrayed partners, and they are supportive, of each other. So you can really lean into that. And we've got the work group for betrayed partners starting again, I think in August, but so check that out. But anyway, I think that was an important message to hear, the impotent one. Why would it even matter? Like, I'm not even going to bother because it's not going to matter. Nobody's going to pay attention. You have a lot of information though. You recognize too that you, like, like, you're doing well. You've got some information. You're leaning into some of these resources. So stay the course. It's a journey. I'm really glad you're here. Next question. My biological father has literally written me off the second day of my birth. He signed the document when giving me up for birth and got the name of another man and not his. And he agreed and signed this document. Mom was married and he never corrected this. So I have the last of a man I don't know. The last name of a man I don't know and doesn't know me. It's like a gap in my identity.
Well, would you like to change that? Would you, I mean, I don't want to go into rescue mode, so you can tell me to stop, but would you like to change that? So like, I have questions that you can't answer because of the form, but like, do you want your name to be your biological father's name? Was there somebody else in your life that really showed up as somebody that was a father in your life that maybe you want that to be like, there's lots of like, our name is something that's part of our identity. What I'm hearing as part of that is like, number one, there's betrayal with that, there's abandonment with that, and there's loss with that. So there's 3 wounds that go along with that. And what I'm hearing is that, who am I? And when we ask that question, especially when we're a kid, our brain's going to come up with all kinds of answers that are probably not quite accurate. So I don't know how old you are today, but the beauty of asking that today is you get to figure out who you are. Who do you want to be? What is your identity? What is your purpose? What is your mission? Who is the kind of person that you want to be? And what's the legacy that you want to live on this planet? And it sucks that these 2 men did this. That it makes me sad. And part of that is also like using that, you could use the saying goodbye, saying hello letter with that for them, saying goodbye to what happened and saying hello to who you are, and connecting with your identity. But I hear the gap. Hopefully maybe there's somebody who can walk with you on that journey of helping you figure that out. They do not define you. I get it, but they don't. You get to define you.
Interestingly, I know multiple people who have chosen a name and legally changed it. One of them changed it to Hope. It was a female, but it was like they were intentional, and I know, I know other people who have looked up the root of a name and chosen a name that matched who they wanted to be, legally changed their name. I am confident that that was empowering, because now I'm making a choice, not, this is what happened to me, I made a choice. So I love that you're asking, who do you want to be from here? Here's where you are right now. Who do you want to be going forward? So okay, next question. Can you get a betrayed spouse to read that letter to you? I'm kind of assuming that might be that golden mother letter, but I'm not 100% sure. So
if you feel comfortable, you can ask whoever you want to read the letter to you. So it's whoever you feel would really embody that motherly, and you could do it golden father too. So, whoever you want, but whoever really could embody that energy of the golden mother or the golden father, and could read that to you, somebody that you trust, somebody that holds that energy, that's who I would ask. If your betrayed partner, your betrayed spouse, is that person, like if it's the betrayal partner, but you'd have to ask them if they feel comfortable doing that. It's a choice, right? Everybody gets to make a choice whether they're going to do it, but it's a possibility. It needs to be safe for both people.
yeah. So in the therapy world, there's a thing called the trauma egg, and you put in pictures of the various traumas. There's also an angel egg, and I was thinking I would be looking for somebody that was, that is kind of that person in my life that that has been supportive. So I think it's more about who can fill the role, safely for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. My husband was in SA since 2003. Over the past 5 years, he's been in SAA. He has a sponsor, accountability who is not in recovery, a therapist, and we have a couples therapist. We are supposed to be celebrating my birthday by going to a theater. Oh, we were. But by a sad twist of fate, we did get to a play, which was a one-woman play. The play featured his trigger. He realized I was very uncomfortable, not enjoying myself. He did nothing to affirm, confirm, or validate that he understood that I would be uncomfortable. When we arrived home, he said he was disappointed because I did not enjoy myself. He lied, claiming that it was not his trigger. It was bad enough that he did not comfort me, but to lie and deny was devastating. I feel re-traumatized and very unsafe and very anxious. I have many memories of my spouse's unhealthy behavior since these continue to be difficult to let them go and move forward. What treatment options are available for myself and my spouse who has never been empathetic? Your course in July for men who need help getting empathy, and the chat in the chat, Troy put a link to that, would be a good start. But since 2003, I mean, so this is 20 years, and I'm sad that that he's still like, that's not recovery. That is, I stopped some of these behaviors, but I'm sorry. That's anyway. What are your thoughts, Troy?
So I've been learning a lot about masculine and feminine energy, and he did not protect you. He didn't protect you. And whether he was or wasn't triggered, like I think you've known him long enough to know that he probably was, and he's not owning that, and he's not being honest about that, and it's probably because of his own shame. It's not an excuse. He was probably thinking, oh my gosh, I probably should have, and I didn't, he just, and so his shame, that's what prevents empathy, by the way, is shame prevents us from being able to be empathic, but he didn't protect you. So the empathy class that I'm doing in July would help him. At the same time, what would help you is continuing to step into your own sense of well-being and knowing that you're enough. And if you are uncomfortable, then get up and walk out. To not wait on him anymore. And that sounds really crappy, that you would need to be put in that position, because you don't want to be put in that position. But you have the right that if you are uncomfortable and it's making you feel unsafe, get up and walk out. He'll follow you. It should be the other way around, but he will follow you if you get up and walk out. So part of that is you owning and honoring your gut. And if you were in that play and you were uncomfortable and you didn't like what was happening, then you honor that. For whatever reason, you didn't, and that's okay, but it made you feel uncomfortable. So you know that you are worthy enough to say, hey, I don't know how much longer I have on this planet, but I'm not going to be putting myself in situations that make me uncomfortable. I am worthy of spending my time doing things that I enjoy, and that wasn't one of them. And you can come along with me or not.
Okay, the next question. When my SA husband says and behaves in ways where he wants desperately to connect and move forward in a relationship, 8 months post D-Day, 4 months since real big stuff came out, I want to run for the hills, protect myself and keep myself and my baby safe from his manipulations and extremely risky behaviors. I don't know how to give him a chance to grow or us to grow. At 13, I left home because my mother's boyfriend was abusing me and manipulating everyone around him. So, wow.
Okay, so I'm reading through the lines. I don't know if he's doing something that is abusive and manipulating or not. But the fact that you want to run away and protect yourself and your baby means that you're not feeling safe. And it says his manipulations and his extremely risky behavior. So it's kind of like the same thing that I was saying with the person just before. Like, what is your gut saying? Like, you are worthy of respect and dignity and safety and protection, and so is your baby. And so if you're not safe, then you need to be able to find resources in your community that can help you be safe. It doesn't sound like it's been 8 months since D-Day, but that doesn't, and 4 months since the real big stuff came out, but that doesn't tell me whether he's actually in recovery. It just, the stuff came out. So this relatively short period of time for trust to be rebuilt. There's a lot of boundaries on your part that he may not be abiding by. And you have absolutely every right in the world to be able to have some boundaries in order to be able to feel safe. And if he's not respecting them, then talking with your therapist and going to the support groups and the 12-step meetings to get some support for you would be where I would go to say, hey, I need some support of what do I do, because I really don't feel safe. But it's okay for you to have boundaries, and like your gut is saying, I don't feel safe, I don't trust them. And I would encourage you to trust your gut.
100% agree. And there's a work group that starts tonight, out of the doghouse, which is how to rebuild trust. And I'm with Troy. I don't hear anything in there about what he's actually doing for his recovery. That would be a good start. But it is manipulative if he's like pressuring you to, I want to reconnect. That's about him. He's not honoring what you need for your safety. So, but Out of the Doghouse is a 6-week course, 90 minutes live facilitated. That would be a good starting place for him. But yeah, I hope you're joining the Betrayed Partner groups on sex and relationship healing. And the Betrayed Partner work group starts in August. Another option, but it is very early in the process. He has to show you with his actions how he's changing, not just words of, I want to reconnect. So, okay, next question. I grew up in a family of 7 kids. My father had a raging temper, which put fear of God in me. I spent childhood trying to be perfect to avoid getting in trouble and having to experience his rage. My core belief is that when I am not perfect in my life now, I am not good enough. When my wife points out character defects now, I go to that core belief and guilt. Any suggestions on how to rid myself of the core belief? And he's been to Asila, he's in 12-step, he's got a sponsor, so he's doing good work. Thank you for sharing that. But how do you shift that now?
So, okay, so there's lots of different ways. There's different techniques to do that. One, some people thinks is hokey, but it's called the emotional freedom technique, or otherwise known as tapping. Yeah. So yeah. You can YouTube it. And so basically you are saying positive things about yourself, and you're tapping them, and it's based on like where acupuncture points are. And there's a lot of people who believe that if you do that, and you do that a lot every day, that gets wired into your body. So you use that as a way. So EFT, not to be confused with Sue Johnson's version of EFT. So EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. EMDR is another way of doing that, which what that does is it takes those traumatic events and the negative core belief that's tied into it, and then through bilateral stimulation of your right and left side of your brain, either through sight or sound or touch, we change the negative core belief into a positive one that then is anchored into your brain. So every time then that wound gets hit, instead of the negative core belief getting activated, it's actually a positive one. So those are 2 ways that you can do that. The Finding Peace worksheet, you're always welcome to come on Friday mornings. We have a guy run through the Finding Peace worksheet every Friday morning, where we help them challenge those negative core beliefs every time. Is another way of doing that. Journaling, meditation, those are a lot of different ways do it. So part of it is recognizing what is the core belief, recognizing, as you mentioned, perfection. So there you got the shadow of shame called the judge going on in there, who's telling you, well, if you only were better, then you would be enough. Recognizing why he's out, having some compassion for him, and then being able to say the truth. So you identify what the negative core belief is and then what the truth is, and then being able to neutralize that. So those are several different ways that you could to do that.
I love all of that. And for me in the moments, if I, rather than going to my, like, oh, they're pointing out my negatives, being curious, what I hear you say, like reflecting back to your wife, what I hear you asking for is that correct? Because like that shifts it for me too. I'm not going to my, oh, I'm unworthy. It's like she's identifying something for me. I need to pay attention so I get the right message. So so sometimes just that little bit of a shift of like, I'm going to be curious, there's something she's asking for and I want to understand it. So so I'm going to reframe it back to her, in a way and make sure I've got it right. That might help in the moment too. So okay, next question. My husband admitted and acknowledged he has a pornography addiction. He quit alcohol for 34 years, was attending to AA for a long time, but stopped the last 14 years. He agrees to go back to attend AA meetings instead of attending SAA meetings. What is your comment about that? For me, at least, he's willing to attend some type of 12-step meetings.
Well, that's not unusual, to be honest. I can't tell you how many individuals who have been in recovery for a really long time from drugs and alcohol, only to discover that they've also been dealing with sexual addiction or sexual compulsion things. So that's not unusual. We use these chemicals and these behaviors to try and numb pain. And we've talked a lot about the attachment wounds today. And so although he was able to be sober from the alcohol, which that's freaking amazing, I'm so proud of him, that didn't necessarily mean that any of the wounds underneath were healed. And oftentimes we don't even recognize that that was a big deal. Especially around sex, there's a lot of people who don't believe that porn's a big deal. They don't believe that cheating on your wife every once in a while is a big deal. So like, there's a lot of people who just don't think it is until it becomes a problem in their life, in their relationship. And then they're like, oh man. And then they start to look at it and they're like, this is not how I want to live my life. This is incongruent with my value system. It's causing problems in my relationship. It's hurting my wife. I don't want to live this way anymore. And because he's familiar with the 12 steps and he's familiar with recovery, the process isn't going to be new to him. There will be some things to learn and discover and maybe some different ways, but it's just another part of the healing journey that he's on. And so it's, I'm glad he's willing to go. We have there's like all kinds of 12-step meetings. If you go to I think it's Seeking Integrity or Sex and
It's on the sex and relationship. I'll put a link right now for all this porn addiction. I just put a link for the Porn Addiction 101 and Sex Addiction 101 work groups. That would be, they're different. But there's also similarity, because I was talking to somebody, this was a while back, but they were like, well, he'll go to AA, and he was going to one AA a week. I was like, not enough, but they're like, and sex isn't in there. And I got out my big book and I start going through, yes, it is. And like, I started listing all the pages. And so, half measures availed us nothing. And so it's one of those where, does he really want to be happy, joyous, and free? Then he'll go to any lengths to get the help that he needs. And so, AA is great. I love AA. Don't get me wrong. I still go to, I go to my personal meetings, but at the end of the day, getting the help, at AA, he's not going to get a 3-circle plan for how to address his, porn addiction. They don't do that. It's just, so getting the right help, to address the problems. When I had sinus surgery, I went to a sinus surgery specialist. I got the help I needed for that. I didn't go to my general practitioner. When I go to the dermatologist, I get the help I need for the issue that I have. And so, yes, if you absolutely work your program and really are thorough doing the 4th and 5th step, and hopefully he's back doing that again. I too often hear, and I'm not saying he's doing this, this is the story I'm telling myself, is that, I'm going to go back to I'm going back to where I'm familiar. I'm going back to AA. I'm going to do a meeting a week and it's going to be enough. But that whole 14 years, like, addiction is just waiting. I know lots of people with decades of sobriety that relapse. And honestly, yes, I'm grateful that he stopped the alcohol, but, if he's using other things, porn, smoking, vaping, whatever, food, those all still numb the hole in the soul. That still is looking to deal with those wounds that we have, that, in an unhealthy way. So I hope really that he's standing at a point where it's like, okay, I need to do something different. I need to address this. I'm glad he's talking to you about it, but I'm glad you're here. But I would absolutely encourage him to aggressively work on the recovery across all the addictions. Go back to AA. Great. I haven't drank in decades, still go to AA for that issue. So I don't want to drink. That's the problem. I don't want to drink. I don't want to act out. I don't want to use my food. I don't want any of those. I want to be happy, joyous, and free.
I love it.
Okay. We are out of time. Thank you, Troy. Thank you for sharing. And I really didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
I'm going to go rehydrate after my cry fest. So anyway, thank you all for the great questions. Thank you for being here. Please, please, please lean into the amazing free resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com too. Thanks, everybody. Bye.